everybody. Breaking news from the White House. Any moment now, President Trump could talk to reporters on his way to New Orleans. Several big stories of the day. The president pushing back hard on two different Russia reports, calling out Democrats in the meantime on the shutdown battle as that continues. We say good morning. Hope you had an awesome weekend. It's Monday. It feels like it. I'm Bill Hemmer, live here in New York. How you doing?
So we begin. Good morning, Bill. I'm Sandra Smith. The president calling a New York Times front page story this weekend ludicrous. The report says the FBI launched a counterintelligence probe in 2017 after President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey.
Now, another report from the Washington Post claiming the president concealed details of his private meetings with Putin from senior administration officials.
Trump has been firing off tweets all weekend and all morning in response. And on the congressional side, lawmakers are reacting to the claims down party lines.
I'd like to know who leaked it because they have an agenda not very friendly to President Trump. And I, for one, don't trust what I read in the New York Times.
That was a concerning, even alarming report, and it suggests to me that the Mueller investigation needs to continue to its logical conclusion.
Doug McKelway has the latest from the White House this morning. Doug, good morning.
Good morning, Sandra. The president has been picking his travels very, very carefully these days as the government shutdown enters its 24th straight day, the longest on record. Visits with the troops, a good thing. Visits to farmers, a good thing. Playing golf, not such a good thing. Visits to Puerto Rico, not such a good thing. He is fond of farmers and has tried to bolster their spirits amidst the tariff wars and the loss of cheap immigrant labor as he cracks down on border incursions. However, he just tweeted at about 7:20 this morning, quote, getting ready to address the farm convention today in Nashville, Tennessee. Love our farmers, love Tennessee, a great combination. See you in a little while. Trouble is that meeting with the farmers is in New Orleans. The president instantaneously deleted that tweet. The president also tweeting this morning that the onus is entirely on Democrats to end the government shutdown. Another presidential tweet. Nancy and Cry and Chuck can end the shutdown in 15 minutes. At this point, it has become their and the Democrats' fault. I've been waiting all weekend. Democrats must get to work now. Border must be secured. That, while 30 or more Democrats and their families have been meeting in Puerto Rico on hurricane recovery efforts there, also taking in a performance of the Broadway show Hamilton and soaking up some sun, as you can see from this pic from New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. Not exactly the kind of image you want to see in the midst of a government shutdown in a very cold and snowy Washington, D.C.
Well,
Sandra?
Doug, the administration's pushing back hard against this latest Washington Post report that President Trump tried to hide his conversations with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and that report coming down the pike after Friday night's report by the New York Times that the FBI opened a counterintelligence investigation of the President of the United States, basically looking into whether or not he was a Russian spy in the aftermath of the firing of FBI Director James Comey. Now, the Washington Post is reporting that Mr. Trump took a translator's notes of his conversation with Putin at the 2017 G20 summit in Hamburg, Germany. The reporting has further entrenched both sides in the broader debate over Russian influence in U.S. elections and beyond. The White House and Republicans defending the president against what they believe is the FBI's rogue leadership.
The president said this weekend that it's the most insulting thing he's ever been asked, that's ever been said about him, which is saying a great deal given everything that's been said and done about him. The other thing is, I have a slightly different view on it, which is it sort of confirms what the president has said all along about some of the rogue actors at the very tippy top of the FBI who are no longer there because they were fired and worse. Some of them were deemed to be leaking and lying, sexting each other.
And Democrats, meanwhile, increasingly convinced that President Trump is acting in concert with President Putin.
Why is he so chummy with Vladimir Putin? This man who is a former KGB agent, never been a friend of the United States, invaded our allies, threatens us around the world, and tries his damnedest to undermine our elections. Why is this President Trump's best buddy? I don't get it. And when he takes the interpreter's notes and wants to destroy them so no one can see what was said in written transcript, it raises serious questions about the relationship between this president and Putin.
The new head of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff of California, vowing to subpoena those translators' notes in advance of that 2017 G20 summit meeting. Sandra, back to you.
Doug McKelway, thank you.
Let's get some analysis. Byron York's been watching it all weekend. Good morning, Byron, to you in Washington, D.C. Let's pick up on the Russia reports. Judge Jeanine asked the president about it on Saturday night. Here's how part of that went.
I'm going to ask you, are you now or have you ever worked for Russia, Mr. President?
I think it's the most insulting thing I've ever been asked. I think it's the most insulting article I've ever had written. And if you read the article, you'd see that they found absolutely nothing.
What Democrats are saying is that he did not say no to the question. Well, you can interpret his response as forcefully as it was. Byron, what is your read on that?
Well, I would not be surprised if he does say no at some point in the future, but it would have been a very simple answer to say no. But the important thing about this New York Times article is it does say that no evidence has publicly emerged to show that President Trump was in touch with Russian officials secretly or was somehow being directed by them or something like that.
I've got the quote. Hey, Byron, I got the quote right here. No evidence has emerged publicly that Mr. Trump was secretly in contact with or took direction from Russian government officials. Keep going.
Well, then the Republican question is, so what's all this about? A number of Republicans believe that Trump was essentially under investigation by the FBI long before May of 2017, when this report says the FBI was so disturbed by these reports that they opened up an investigation. Basically, the whole Trump-Russia investigation that had existed for more than a year, or a year at that point, was directed toward President Trump. So a lot of Republicans are trying to figure out why this report came out, exactly what's going on behind it. You saw Lindsey Graham, who is now the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, where Republicans still have the majority, wanting answers on this.
Okay. In the meantime, you got Elijah Cummings on 60 Minutes. Did you see this last night? Here is a little clip about what you can expect very soon.
We can look at anything, but the fact that we can look at anything is part of the problem. There's so much. The Congress doesn't meet but so many days in a year. And all I'm saying is that we've got to hit the ground, not running, but flying.
That tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Well, it does. Actually, what Congressman Cummings said is a real problem. The big question for Democrats now is the oversight committees normally oversee just basically anything in the United States government. If there's corruption in this program, if there's money wasted in this program, they should investigate that. So should they actually investigate the actual problems in the United States government, or should they focus entirely on President Trump? I will say that I think in this coming Congress, the holy grail for Democratic investigators will be to try to get the president's tax returns. The law does allow the House Ways and Means Committee or the Joint Committee on Taxation to get an individual's tax returns. We'll see a lot of fighting on that. But for Democrats, a lot of Democrats that believe that could be the key to everything they want to investigate.
Come back to these stories from the Times and the Post over the weekend. How much do you think that is related to the hearings that begin tomorrow? Bill Barr, the new AG.
Well, what we've seen in the past is that a big blockbuster news report like this provides material for questions that hostile senators ask the nominees. So I would not be surprised if you see a lot of questions to Bill Barr about this, but most of the questions from Democrats are going to be some version of, you are not going to disturb the Mueller investigation, are you? And so far, nobody has. The Mueller investigation is apparently marching toward its conclusion, and to our knowledge, it has not been impeded in any way by the Trump appointees who've run the Justice Department or other agencies.
And to that question, he'll say no. One more thing. You write a piece, okay, about the shutdown. You say, in the border fight, here's the headline anyway, Democrats want technological wall that won't keep anybody out. I mean, you can give the drones and you can do all the surveillance, but that's not going to stop a caravan, Byron. What's your point in that?
That's right. As you know, a number of Democrats who have said a real wall would be immoral, but a technological wall, those are Nancy Pelosi's words, or a smart wall, James Clyburn's words, would be a better idea. And it would use cameras, drones, infrared sensors, other technology to detect people crossing the border illegally without putting up an actual physical barrier to stop them. The point is that that's never worked in the past, and it's even less relevant now because the nature of the flow of illegal immigrants across the border has changed. In the past, it was adult men, single adult men who could be apprehended and quickly returned across the border to Mexico. Now it is more families and unaccompanied children who by U.S. law cannot be returned. They're not trying to enter the United States undetected. They want to be caught and then begin the asylum process that can keep them in the United States, even if their asylum claim is not valid.
Interesting point. Byron, thank you. The wall reduced crime in San Diego, reduced crime in Tucson, reduced crime in El Paso. We've got that. Byron, thank you so much. You covered a lot for us on a Monday. Thank you, sir. Alan Dershowitz is coming up later this hour about the report and what it means. The next hour, Peter King, the New York congressman, is our headliner, and former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer's got his take on the day of the news as well. So that's a packed show for a Monday.
You can't just say, busy Monday morning. every Monday morning. All right, we've got this Fox News alert for you this morning as well. President Trump warning Turkey not to attack Kurdish forces in Syria once American troops leave. The president tweeting this morning, quote, starting the long overdue pullout from Syria while hitting the little remaining ISIS territorial caliphate hard and from many directions. Will attack again from existing nearby base if it reforms. Will devastate Turkey economically if they hit Kurds. Create 20-mile safe zone. This comes as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo meets with the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia. Rich Edson's live from the Saudi Arabian capital of Riyadh with more. Rich, Secretary Pompeo elaborated on the president's tweet.
He did this morning, Sandra, shortly after his meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The secretary says that the president is simply explaining his administration's goals in Syria.
We want to make sure that the folks who fought with us to take down the Caliphate and ISIS have security, and also that terrorists acting out of Syria aren't able to attack Turkey. Those are the twin aims.
Here in Riyadh, Secretary Pompeo acknowledged the U.S. and allies still have to work out the precise methodology of how they'll accomplish that. He says the administration is looking to create buffer zones to protect the forces that fought with the U.S. against ISIS. Turkey considers Syrian Kurdish forces to be terrorists. The United States considers them to be reliable partners in the fight against ISIS. And now Turkey's foreign minister is commenting on the president's tweet. He says that it is never afraid of threats and that threatening Turkey economically will get you nowhere. Sandra.
All right, Rich Edson from Riyadh for us this morning. Rich, thank you.
About 12 past the hour now. This deadly snowstorm, it continues hitting many across the country. Now the East Coast, slammed by the winter fury. 7 are dead in multiple states. Tell you what that storm is up to today, coming up here.
Plus, President Obama called Fox News alert, a powerful storm dumping snow across the Midwest before making its way east. Nearly 1.5 feet of snow fell in some parts of the country, along with sleet and freezing rain, causing power outages, deadly accidents, and some travel delays. Slick roads caused crashes in Kansas that killed 3 people. And in Missouri, 4 people were killed. North Carolina, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. seeing several inches of snow and ice as well, making for hazardous conditions.
Clinging on to power instead of deficits of leadership, and we need new blood.
So if you heard it there, that was Barack Obama from about 100 yards away from that camera, talking about what Democrats need in 2020. In the meantime, here's what you're getting. Tulsi Gabbard, Congressman John Delaney, Elizabeth Warren, Senators Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand. Who else is going to get in? Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, John Sununu, former New Hampshire governor, White House chief of staff under President H.W. Bush. How you doing, sir? Are you running, by the way?
Happy New Year, Bill.
Because the boat's pretty big at the moment.
I'm switching parties to run as a Dem.
They would love to have you. The thing we heard from President Obama was new blood. How do you interpret that comment?
Look, if I were Joe Biden, I would tell Obama to button his lip and butt out of the process. The president has no business interjecting into every little thing that's happening nowadays. But if Obama was referring to the quantitatively illiterate millennials who don't know the difference between a million, billion, or a trillion like Ocasio-Cortez, or perhaps to the anti-Catholic wing of the Democratic Party like Kamala Harris, the Republicans are thrilled to have him stick his nose where it ought not to be.
Okay. New York Times op-ed, Run, Joe, run. I assume he's running.
I think Biden's running, and I think the Democrats under 70 are going to be surprised at the energy that he brings to the game. This is going to be a wild and wide open process, and I think Biden's experience and his long political list of IOUs will serve him well. I think he's being underestimated by a lot of people.
Okay, interesting. There's a piece at CNN that talks about the reason why this is happening is because they believe Donald Trump is beatable. I don't know what your feeling is on that, but what's Trump's path to re-election, do you now think?
His path is paved by the gold of the chaos in the Democratic Party and what will be the irresponsibility of the democratically controlled House. And I think you will see over time that they will begin to change their mind.
Interesting. What if he doesn't get the wall? Is that the same as no new taxes? Read my lip from the early 90s?
In an odd way, as long as he makes the fight. He doesn't get the I think it strengthens his reelection.
How so?
Well, his base will still want that wall. And he brought him out with that message last time, and he'll bring him out this time, and he'll tell him, give me a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and we'll do it.
Meaning he's got an election issue to run on. That's
Yes.
what you're saying. Go back to the picture, guys, of all the faces on the screen we had there a moment. I know how the RNC was pulling their hair out in 2016 with 17 Republicans trying to get the nomination. What's the DNC do with this?
They rent Yankee Stadium for debates.
That might work. Seriously, how do you handle it?
I don't know. I don't know. It is so chaotic. What are they going to do? Draw groups of 10 for 4 debates? It's unbelievable. So let's see how they handle it. But I can tell you, if it really is 37 to 40 candidates, there's no constructive way to handle it.
No, I'm hearing maybe as many as 20 debates during the season. That's a lot. Governor, thank you. You'll be watching. Governor,
That's unbearable. That's unbearable.
Okay, well, you can choose to watch as much as you want. Thank you, Gov.
We are still awaiting President Trump's departure at the White House. Could be happening at any moment now. Will he talk to reporters on his way to New Orleans? We do not know. If he does, we will certainly take those comments. Russia reports the shutdown battle still dominating headlines. We will take you there live if indeed he does speak to reporters.
Also, this story on Friday, wow, was this a stunner. That's the suspect in the Jamie Kloss kidnapping, set to make his first court appearance in a matter of hours as we learn more about who he is, Jacob Patterson.
There's been a lot of emotion. There was one scene that showed a number of people assisting with the search.
In a Ford Expedition SUV. Her husband is one of 800,000 federal employees not getting paid with the shutdown now in its 24th day. That's a pretty happy picture, right?
That's pretty good timing.
Honey, I got an idea. I'm not working, but we won the lottery.
Congratulations to her.
Well done.
All
Good
right.
day.
Now to the suspect in a Wisconsin double murder and kidnapping case due in court this afternoon, where prosecutors are expected to formally charge 21-year-old Jake Patterson today. He was arrested after 13-year-old Jamie Kloss escaped from a home where she was held for months after her parents were found murdered. Patterson's lawyer speaking about the case yesterday.
It's too early for us to determine what our defense is. We've not seen the criminal complaint. We've not read the police reports. We've not seen any videos or any other materials that they have available for us. We have to evaluate his entire case before we can make a decision as to which direction we're going.
Matt Finn is following the story live from Barron, Wisconsin this morning. Matt.
Sandra, Jamie Kloss's alleged kidnapper has been in custody since last Thursday, and now today we expect to get our first glimpse of the alleged killer and kidnapper, 21-year-old Jake Patterson, is being held on 2 counts of first-degree homicide and 1 count of kidnapping, and his attorneys, the public defenders, say this case is so severe they prefer he not use the option of appearing in court via video.
I think the seriousness of the charges, his ability to be in court and see the judge, see everybody, rather than through a video screen. It's just a personal preference.
While Jamie was missing, the sheriff held press conferences here, and standing inside the lobby right now, there's still a large Christmas tree with the Jamie Closs theme. But now Jamie Closs's alleged kidnapper is going to appear inside this building before a judge. Sandra.
Matt, now we're getting the very first looks of the house where Jamie eventually escaped from.
Yet the Daily Mail obtained some pretty eerie photos of the inside of this house. One of those photos shows a small room in the basement where Jamie might have escaped. That room has a mattress on the ground, stuffed animals, what looks like a girl's storage boxes, some purple boxes. This could be the room where Jamie was held. And upstairs, there's a picture of the living area. It's a fairly messy house. You can only imagine this poor girl might have spent Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's in this house after she watched her parents being executed. And Jamie's aunt tells us that she will be here in court today. She will be at every court proceeding going forward because the Closs family is seeking the harshest sentence possible for the alleged killer and kidnapper. Sandra.
All that'll be happening this afternoon. Matt Finn, thank you.
28 past the hour now. Hundreds of thousands of students in a major American city could be in a bind. Why a national movement may lead to the first teacher strike there in nearly 30 years.
Plus, the president not pulling any punches as he sounds off on the battle with Democrats over border security. Why he says the entire shutdown battle could be resolved in 15 minutes. Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs joins us on that.
I'd love for the Democrats to join us here. I know it's not Puerto Rico, but it's pretty out here. Hopefully there'll be no snowball fights, but we're here to negotiate. I think the president, he's been working the phones.
Ahead of his trip to New Orleans, we do expect him to discuss a variety of the big headlines this morning, including the shutdown battle. Earlier this week, he was taking aim at Democrats who did go down to Puerto Rico for a working vacation. The president has been sounding off on this on Twitter, saying, quote, "I'm in the White House waiting. The Democrats are everywhere but Washington as people await their pay. They are having fun and not even talking." So as we await the president, he is talking to reporters now. Congressman Andy Biggs sits on the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us now. Congressman, thank you. Obviously, the president could make some news here, depending on what he says. He's headed down to talk to the farmers in New Orleans, the American Farm Bureau Federation. A big moment for the president and those farmers. A lot to discuss there, a lot to discuss here. First off, what do we do? The shutdown continues. The president says 15 minutes. That's all I need. We can solve this. How do we do it?
Well, we need the Democrats to move a bit. They've been unwilling to move. They've been unwilling to actually sit down and negotiate with any sincerity. And, you know, the president has moved every which way from $25 billion down to $5.7 billion. He's been indicating that he'd be willing to move off that number, but we have to build a wall. And the Democrats have said, we're not going to give a penny. That makes it really hard to take care of something like this, especially when they leave town. So. Yeah,
and what we know about that is 150 lobbyists are down there as well, by the way. About 30 Democratic members of Congress traveled to Puerto Rico, some with their families. This is a winter retreat that was planned before the shutdown, of course, but also this special performance of the hit Broadway show Hamilton is involved. So the president is openly criticized Democrats for being down there to begin with. Does he have a point? Yeah, I think so. I mean, the optics at least show insensitivity at its best, but maybe, quite frankly, it shows hypocrisy. These same people were castigating the president. If he were to go to Mar-a-Lago, for instance, imagine how apoplectic they would be. Secondarily, they're saying how sensitive they are to the folks who are not getting paid during the shutdown, and then the optic is so bad. I mean, it almost looks like a let them eat cake moment. We're going to say out of one side of our mouth, we understand your problem, but on the other hand, we're going to go hang out at the beach. And pictures I saw of these folks on the beach of Puerto Rico, just
it's just a really bad optic at this time.
They chartered a jet. It carries that carried the attendees. Yeah. They also did bring 250 pounds of donated medical supplies on that chartered flight. As we continue to learn more about the trip there, we continue to hear others sound off on this shutdown. Here is Senator Dick Durbin.
It's time to send out that Kentucky bloodhound and look for Mitch McConnell. This week, there are Senate Republicans, the centrists who were trying to find some solution, were shut down by the White House. It's time for those centrists to speak up in their own Republican Senate caucus and to tell Mitch McConnell the party's over. We want this to end. There's no excuse for the shutdown. Come on, let's get down to business here. Open up this government tomorrow. The president can do it, and one phone call from Mitch McConnell can get it started.
Congressman, how do you respond to the senator?
Well, I say, first of all, the Democrats have the extra 8 or 9 votes that would allow for a wall to be built and funding from the House bills that have been sent over previously. We need to redo that. And so it's not the president that's causing the shutdown, quite frankly. It's the Democrats, because they actually control the votes in the Senate, because it's a 60-vote rule. And the second thing I would say is President Obama declared the emergency 12 times. And so I think we're forcing President Trump to declare an emergency to build the wall. I think that is probably where we're going to end up going. And, you know, that's just where we are.
At the same time, Congressman, support for the wall does seem to be growing. This is the latest ABC poll on this issue. 42% of Americans support a wall. That is up from 34% just 1 year ago, with 54%, the majority of Americans polled, still oppose building a border wall. But opposition to the wall is shrinking, as 63% opposed the wall a year ago. What do you make of this trend? Where is it going? And obviously there is a trend of building support for the wall.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the poll shows that. I know when I'm going out, I sense that trajectory is moving that direction. And here's why. The narrative is actually getting out there now. No one can deny that there's not a real serious issue at the border, a crisis, if you will. And so what that does is that allows people to reform their opinions, and that's what you're seeing. As we find out more and more about the problems, you've got the caravans that have come across. That has highlighted it. You've got another caravan forming. It's going to be the biggest caravan yet. And when these people start coming across the border and crashing through the border, Americans understand we have a real serious problem. And I think that the trajectory is going to grow. And if you wait another month, it's going to actually be well over 50%.
We'll see. Meanwhile, the president and the GOP continue to get the blame for the shutdown. The latest polling, 53% blame Republicans and the president for that. That has grown. As far as Democrats, 29%. I want to move on to this New York Post report on this 32-foot smuggling tunnel that has been discovered at the Arizona border. Congressman, what you can tell us about this? Mexican authorities have unearthed a 32-foot long smuggling tunnel, the third one in the area that they have found in less than a month. Can you tell us anything about that? Do you know anything about it?
Well, what I know is that it's a small tunnel as far as round, you know, the size, the circumference, if you will. It's big enough to get a person through and get drugs through. And this is the preferred method now, because Nogales actually has a series of drainage pipes that run through it, and so they connect into those. And one time they actually cut a hole underneath a parking spot in Nogales where they could actually bring a van, that they cut the bottom out of the van. They would run people and drugs right up as the vans would come and park over that before that was found. This is another way of people getting through. It's a serious problem, and this is, like you say, this is the third one they found this month. We suspect that there's many more.
This is a 32-foot long tunnel. The others uncovered were a 50-foot and a 65-foot tunnel used for the transfer of drugs and people, according to officials. And you described the width of it. The circular door, according to police video in this report, says it's just big enough to fit a body. Congressman, great to have you on the program this morning. Covered a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Have a good one.
There are hundreds of thousands of students in L.A. bracing for what could be the first teacher strike there in 30 years. Union members say they did not receive a new contract offer over the weekend. They're holding out for smaller classes and more personnel. And Jonathan Hunt's tracking that. He is live in L.A. Jonathan, where do we stand?
Bill, good morning to you. The strike here is part of a national movement under the hashtag Red for Ed. It began in West Virginia and has emboldened teachers' unions across the country as it has spread. The LAUSD strike, the first in 30 years here begins this morning. We're expecting a large picket here at John Marshall High School in LA. What the teachers want is more money in terms of salary. They want smaller class sizes. They want more nurses, more librarians, more counselors. And they say that the district superintendent, Austin Beutner, is simply not negotiating those things in good faith. Listen here.
Beutner says that our proposals about more staffing, lower class sizes, more resources and supports is rhetoric because there's no money. We have not had an honest partner in bargaining. This may be rhetoric to Beutner, but very real to those of us who are educators in LAUSD, to our students, our parents and families.
Now, the LA School District says it simply cannot afford the teachers' demands, which would, they say, in effect bankrupt the district within 2 years. Listen here.
We cannot afford everything they're asking for. So we're hoping they'll come to the table and tell us what they really want, because they can't have everything they're asking for. We know that. They know that.
Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles, the potential Democratic presidential candidate in 2020, has studiously avoided taking a side in this, but he did weigh in via Facebook yesterday. Listen to Mr. Garcetti.
I urge both sides to come back to the table as soon as possible and keep working around the clock to reach an agreement soon so that teachers and students can get back to the classrooms where they belong.
Now, 31,000 teachers are supposed to be out on strike today here, Bill, in what is the nation's second largest school district. There'll be 2,000 substitute teachers brought in, but that is very few, obviously, for the more than 500,000 students within the LA school district. An open question where those students will be today, where their parents will decide to send them or keep them at home. So it's going to be a very interesting day to see what kind of impact this strike has in what I say is the nation's second largest school district. Bill?
Quite a story affecting a lot of people. We'll follow it. Thank you, Jonathan Hunt, live in LA today. Thank you, sir.
And no repeat for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Their dream of winning a second one slipped through their hands when they lost Sunday's playoff game against the New Orleans Saints. Late in the fourth, only 6 points down, the Eagles were driving only to have Nick Foles' pass go right through the hands of an Eagles receiver and right into a New Orleans Saints. Other teams to move on to conference championship games include the Chiefs, Rams, and who else? Of course, the Patriots. Tom Brady and New England will play in their 8th straight AFC championship game next week. What a weekend.
Amazing. I mean, the Patriots played really just did not show up yesterday. But the afternoon game, the evening game was great. So you have Saints at Rams, Smitty, Sunday. I know you're taking the Saints.
Yep.
You have the Patriots at the Chiefs in the late game on Sunday. The winners go to the Super Bowl in Atlanta.
Who are you cheering for?
I'm going to wait until give me a day or two. Is that fair?
All right, I'll give you a day or two.
There we go.
Ask you on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. We're here, and President Trump has taken questions from reporters on his way to New Orleans. He touched on these Russia reports and the shutdown and a whole lot more. So stand by. We'll play you the tape. Alan Dershowitz is on deck to take it all on. Coming up next, live.
I don't care. I mean, I had a conversation like every president does. You sit with the president of various countries. I do it with all countries.
We have got a lot cooking. President Trump taking questions right now at the White House. You're going to see that in a moment. One report claiming over the weekend after the firing of James Comey, Trump was being investigated as a possible Russian agent. No proof. That was the report. Alan Dershowitz wrote the book, The Case Against Impeaching Donald Trump. Sir, how you doing? Good morning to you. We might get interrupted, so we'll try and squeeze in as much as we can. Let me set the table on some of these reports. New York Times, key sentence, you know they're paying attention to this at the White House, has said the following. It is not clear whether Robert Mueller is still pursuing the counterintelligence matter, and no public evidence has emerged that Mr. Trump himself secretly conspired with the Russian government or took directions from it. So what are we to think? What's the hunch as to why you do a counterintelligence investigation? Why does that happen?
Well, a counterintelligence operation is not a criminal investigation. It's not designed to indict and charge anybody with a crime. It's designed to get information to prevent a foreign enemy from intruding on American interests. That's why it should never be conducted by a special counsel of prosecutors. That's not the role of prosecutors. It's the role of the FBI counterintelligence. It would also be the role of a special commission set up by Congress to investigate Russian influence on elections, which I've called for from the very beginning. But it's not the proper role of a prosecutor to write a report telling us how to make our relationships with the Russians better. That's for Congress, that's for the president, that's not for a special prosecutor.
Okay, Andrew McCarthy writes online, he says, FBI Russia investigation was always about Trump. And in his piece, it goes on to say it wasn't about Manafort or Flynn or Carter Page. You agree with him on that?
Absolutely, 100%. Not only do I agree with him, but Judge Ellis, who presided over the Manafort case, agreed with him. Judge Ellis said on the record, the case against Manafort is not about Manafort. It's an attempt to squeeze him, to get him to sing, perhaps to compose against the real target of the investigation, Donald Trump. Here you have a judge who's conducting the trial making that accusation. You don't need me and McCarthy to make it. You have a judge making it. Of course, it's self-evidently true. All these other people are collateral damage in an effort to try to squeeze them to get incriminating evidence against President Trump. That's the way prosecutors often operate,
that is the case,
and it's a core violation of civil liberties.
If that's the case, again, we got a 2-minute warning for the president, so I may have to interrupt you in a moment here. If that's the case, and what we don't know is to what extent Bob Mueller is actually investigating that aspect of the leadership at the FBI. Your headline, should Mueller report comment on non-criminal conduct? Will he or won't he? Or should he or should he not?
I hope he doesn't. He should not. In the Hill, I make the argument that prosecutors' job is to indict and charge or not indict. It's not their job to issue reports about non-criminal conduct, because remember, they only hear one side of the issue. They don't hear evidence that's exculpatory. They don't allow cross-examination. A report by a special prosecutor is worthless except if it has corroboration or if it indicts.
Apologies for the brevity. Here's the president.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. It's too bad they took the snow off the ground. Too bad. It was more beautiful last night. I'll be going to New Orleans right now. I'm going to be speaking in front of our great farmers. I look forward to that. I did it last year, and I look forward to it. So we'll be back a little bit later. I believe, I don't know if the weather changes things, but the Clemson championship team, the national championship team, will be coming tonight. It'll be exciting. A very great team, an unbelievable team. They'll be coming tonight. And I think we're going to serve McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King's with some pizza. I really mean it. It'll be interesting. And I would think that's their favorite food. So we'll see what happens. But they're coming tonight, the national champions, subject to the weather. So I've been here all weekend. A lot of the Democrats were in Puerto Rico celebrating something. I don't know, maybe they're celebrating the shutdown. We have a very big crisis, a humanitarian crisis on the border. Everybody knows it, they know it. And many of them are saying, we agree with you. Many of them are calling and many of them are breaking. The Republicans are rock solid. We've got to take care of our border. Many of the people, they're all going to get their money. Many of the people that aren't being paid right now are in total agreement with us. You saw the Border Patrol agents. You saw what was happening. They're in total agreement with us. So we'll see how it all goes. I will tell you this. We have a priority. It's the safety of our nation. The southern border has been horrible for decades, and it's now, because of the success of our country, it's now at a level that we cannot put up with. The Democrats have to do something. We need their votes, otherwise we can't solve it. Without their votes, they now control the House. Let's see if they can lead. I don't know that they can lead, but we're going to soon find out. What do you say? Well, that was a suggestion that Lindsey made, but I did reject it, yes. I'm not interested. I want to get it solved. I don't want to just delay it. I want to get it solved. I just don't know anything about it. I read it this morning. It's a lot of fake news. That was a very good meeting. It was actually a very successful meeting. And I have those meetings with everything. I just know nothing about it. It was a very, very successful meeting. We talked about Israel. We talked about the pipeline that Germany is paying Russia a lot of money. I don't think it's appropriate. We talked about that. Talked about many subjects. But I have those meetings one-on-one with all leaders, including the president of China, including Prime Minister of Japan, Abe. We have those meetings all the time. No big deal. Mr. President, Mr. President. I never worked for Russia, and you know that answer better than anybody. I never worked for Russia. Not only did I never work for Russia, I think it's a disgrace that you even asked that question, because it's a whole big fat hoax. It's just a hoax.
Mr. President, what about Steve King from
Who?
Steve King. How different is Steve King?
I haven't been following it. I really haven't been following it. A deal with what? I don't know if we're close on a deal. This should be the easiest deal that I've ever seen. We're talking about border security. Who can be against it? We're talking about drugs pouring in, human traffickers tying up women, putting tape in their mouth, and pouring into our country. We can't have that. We can't have that. We have drugs, we have criminals, we have gangs, and the Democrats don't want to do anything about it. They say, oh, it's immoral. But it wasn't immoral 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and 10 years ago when they all raised their hands to approve a wall. All of a sudden, it's immoral. It's immoral because, one reason, because they know they're going to lose in the 2020 election. That's the only reason to them it's immoral. Who did? Who cares? She's...
What was your take last week talk to China about trade?
We're doing very well with China. They're having a hard time with their economy because of the tariffs. We're doing very well with our economy. We're at records. Our unemployment numbers just hit a record, another record. We're doing extremely well as a country. We're doing better than any country right now, anywhere in the world. China wants to negotiate. I have a great relationship with President Xi because it's good to have relationships with Russia and China and Japan and India. And I have relationships with almost everybody, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I think that we are going to be able to do a deal with China. I can tell you, we are getting things that before I became president, you would have had no chance of getting. They would have laughed at your president's face. The people that started that investigation are McCabe, who's a proven liar and was fired from the FBI, are Lisa Page, who was forced to leave the FBI, and her lover, Peter Strzok, who we got their text messages, and what they said in those text messages was shocking when you talk about bias, and also Comey. And I guess they started it because I fired Comey, which was a great thing I did for our country. So the people doing that investigation were people that have been caught that are known scoundrels. I guess you could say they're dirty cops. And I'll tell you what, it is so unfair what's happened to the FBI in terms of the men and women working in the rank and file of the FBI. I know many of them. These are great people. And they are so embarrassed by their leadership. I have never seen a turnaround in a bureau or agency like I have with the FBI. They are so embarrassed. I think 12 people now have been terminated. And others, if you look at what's happening, others are going to go. What happened at the FBI? So when you say, should I have confidence in the FBI or intelligence agencies? When I see war and I see all of these people, when I see Lisa and her lover and their notes and their texts get captured, and you see what they said about me, having nothing to do with investigation, let me tell you something. When people see that, you have an angry country because the whole thing is a hoax. It's a big hoax, and it's very bad for our country. So what happened with the FBI, I have done a great service for our country when I fired James Comey, because he was a bad cop and he was a dirty cop, and he lied. He really lied. And all you have to do, wait a minute, and all you have to do is take a look at the crooked Hillary Clinton investigation where they brought her on the July 4th weekend. July 4th. They didn't swear her in. They didn't do any tapes. They didn't do anything. They just let her go. And she usually said, mostly said, I don't know. She didn't know anything. Just like James Comey a week ago. He was interviewed by Congress. And, you know, unfortunately, people didn't see it because the Republicans with Paul Ryan, unfortunately, they didn't put him out there. But what he said was either he's a bad liar or he's grossly incompetent. Unfortunately, people didn't say it, but you can read the transcript. What? You know how I feel. Okay, we'll see you in, what? I'm not looking to call a national emergency. This is so simple, you shouldn't have to. Now, I have the absolute legal right to call it, but I'm not looking to do that because this is too simple. The Democrats should say we want border security, we have to build a wall, otherwise you can't have border security, and we should get on with our lives. The Democrats are stopping us, and they're stopping a lot of great people from getting paid. All they have to do is say, we want border security. That automatically means a wall or a barrier. Thank you. I'll see you in New Orleans.
On a snowy day in Washington. There we go, Sandra. 10 o'clock East Coast time.
Well, you heard a few things from the president just now, asked about the Lindsey Graham suggestion to reopen the government for a few weeks so a deal can get done. The president responded, not interested. He said, I don't know if we are close to a deal, but Democrats don't want to do anything about it. He also went on to talk about the FBI investigation of the president as it being retaliation for his firing of James Comey. He said the people that started that investigation are dirty cops, rank and file, embarrassed by leadership, called it a big hoax and very bad for the country. The president weighed in on all the big headlines this morning.
Yeah, and there were two big stories over the weekend. There's a lot of reaction to those stories, too, regarding Russia, New York Times, Washington Post. All this in the context of what you're going to see tomorrow at this hour, and that'll be the hearings of William Barr, who's the nominee to be the next Attorney General, and a lot of these questions are going to come up. Welcome to Monday.
Yes.
Hope you had an awesome weekend. I hope you did too, right, Sandra?
You too. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Full coverage now. Your